And you are all set, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newington Town Council regular meeting of Tuesday, July 27th at 7 p.m. If you would all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We'll move on now to roll call.
Counselor Anist. Here. Counselor Braverman.
Here.
Counselor Budraco.
Here.
Counselor Camillo.
Here.
Counselor Donahue.
Here.
Counselor Minke.
Here.
Counselor Minor.
Here.
Counselor Nagel.
Here.
Mayor Del Puno.
Here. All right, everyone is present. And we will move on now to approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Manke, seconded by Counselor Anist. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? I'm sorry. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next this evening is public participation. Any member of the public may join us in the Zoom application by raising your hand in the participants window, or if you're on your phone, you may raise your hand using star 9. And I will switch over to our attendees window to see if anyone would like to join us this evening. We'll just give it a minute so people have enough time to navigate through the windows. All right, folks, I don't see anyone's hands raised right now, so we will continue on. Did any counselors receive any email correspondence within the deadline time?
I did not.
Okay. Thank you. We will move on now to remarks by counselors on public participation. We had no public participation, so we'll continue on. Next item is consideration of old business. And the first item under that is our health update regarding COVID-19. I know, Mr. Chapman, I'm not sure if you want to give us a start off or if you want us to go straight. We have Charles Brown here from the Central Connecticut Health District.
Yeah, so I would suggest we go right to Mr. Brown. There's a lot of new news coming in, so I'm sure he wants to update the council on status, and nothing has changed with us as far as our actions. We're still in the yellow. We're going to get a new color tomorrow, or a new reading tomorrow, and that will dictate how we proceed. But Charlie's here, so I think you want to hear from him.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, Charles.
Hi, how's everybody doing? So trying to pull up numbers specifically for Newington right now, and my computer's giving me fits, but in general, the case numbers have been going up significantly over the past 2 to 3 weeks. As many people have seen on the news, our case positivity rate across the state has increased from about 0.5 to today, where it's up to 2.67, I believe. So our numbers of positive cases have been going up, and that's been primarily due to a surge in the variant, the Delta variant, which was one that originated in India. This variant is about twice as contagious as the regular original strain of COVID-19. So what we're seeing is a lot of spread between people that are not vaccinated at this point, and even because it is very contagious, we are seeing people who have been vaccinated that are actually getting what they call breakthrough infections. That means that an individual who's vaccinated will actually still contract the disease. I do want to mention the fact that the number of breakthroughs that we've seen, we have not seen those individuals to be hospitalized, that generally have mild symptoms. And most of the people that we have seen in Connecticut that have been hospitalized have overwhelmingly been those who have not been vaccinated. So the vaccine does a good job for what it was designed to do. It was never designed to keep you from getting the disease. It was designed really to keep you from being hospitalized and ultimately succumbing to the disease as a whole. And with respect to that, it's actually doing a very good job for those who are vaccinated. We are continuing to watch this as we see the numbers climb. I will say Newington and Weathersfield have both had high numbers here in the past couple weeks. So we've been keeping an eye on that. The numbers as we're looking at them, as I mentioned in the past, it's the younger cohorts now that are bearing the brunt of this. And among those younger cohorts, there are a lot lower vaccination numbers in those populations. So I would just urge everyone at this point, definitely, if you have not been vaccinated, please go and get that shot. It is still free. There are opportunities to be able to get the shot. All you have to do is go to dial 211 and they can let you know the nearest location to be able to receive the vaccine. We are continuing to work with the state ultimately to prepare for things like school. We're going to be talking with all of our school districts here very soon as we come into the school year. And CDC here today has actually come out with recommendations for masking for all those that are in school settings. So I know that there's been significant pushback along those lines. But once again, masking, in addition to the other mitigation strategies that we have, is one of the best ways to protect those individuals that cannot be vaccinated. And there is a significant number of our school populations in the younger, in the lower grades that cannot be vaccinated at this point. With that, I'll turn it over to any questions.
Mankey.
Beth?
I think Councilor Braverman is trying to speak.
Charles. Oops.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. I am trying to speak. Well, are you recommending masks for? Did you hear me? No?
Are we recommending masks for what group?
Am I talking or not talking?
So
Group.
at this point, I think that for anybody who is not vaccinated, we would recommend wearing a mask, especially in indoor settings. For those who are vaccinated, a mask is still recommended in close contact with other individuals. So we're really at the point to where we're trying to tamp down the spread of this Delta variant.
We have a few other hands up. I see Counselor Mankey.
Yeah, Charlie, just a quick question. I know there was some discussion about having to get a booster shot. So even if you got your 2 vaccinations, you'd have to get a booster shot sometime to, like you do every year, a flu shot. Is there still talk of having to do that?
They're still considering that as far as at the national level. They haven't come up with a solid recommendation. I know one of the pharmaceutical companies had come out and said that their data indicated it, but the at the national level, the federal government is still considering it and has not made that recommendation. They did state that at this time,
Is your department gearing up to do that?
we would be ready to do that if it was recommended. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Charles, are you seeing the Delta variant being the one that's predominantly been the breakthrough virus that's causing issues with those that have been vaccinated? Because the reason I ask is I'm aware of 2 business associates that are both vaccinated that have both gotten it. and quite frankly, beat them up pretty good. Is
Mhm.
that the variant that apparently seems to be on the uptick for those that are vaccinated?
Yeah, that's generally what we're hearing from the state epidemiologist, is about 80% of the cases that they're seeing right now in the state is the Delta variant. So, and more than likely the ones that, that have been vaccinated, that's the variant that's actually causing them the issues. They do sequencing, but they don't sequence every particular test that's done. They do about 5 to 10%. So, but of that number, the last number that I saw was probably 76% of the state, of what they were sequencing was the Delta variant.
Okay. And then the other quick question I had for you is, let me restate. The previous statements that were put out by the Department of Health said that, if you vaccinate, you're safe, you're not going to get COVID. Now we're starting to see it turn where those that have been vaccinated, was that information not known initially, or did it just come out as time went on that it was not effective against this variant?
Well, I think this is an evolving thing. And as we've said over times, the virus itself will evolve along with us. And what we've done is we've put a lot of pressure on one particular spike protein in this virus. All of the vaccines are going to basically stop the virus using one method. And as it evolves, it's going to say, okay, I can't propagate this way. I'm going to evolve and try something different. So that's what we're seeing as these variants come out, is they try something a little bit different, and the effectiveness of the vaccines does wane over time as far as just the different ways that this particular virus can infect people. So, when we're looking at effectiveness, though, that's one thing I want to be very clear on. The vaccine itself, is not designed necessarily to keep you from getting the virus itself, but it does a very good job of keeping you out of the hospital. It does a very good job of keeping you from being dead from this particular virus. So, while people will, can and do get sick from this, hopefully the actual illness that they're getting if they've been vaccinated is going to be much less severe than if they had full-blown COVID.
Okay. So as far as the Delta variant, though, that seems to be the one. Are there any other ones that have caused trouble that you're aware of, or is it predominantly the one?
Right now it's Delta, Chris. Predominantly throughout the United States, it's the Delta variant. There are other variants that are out there, and the state, and we're watching those to see if they actually, start to push things out. And I'll give you an example. We had the Alpha variant very early on, the one that came from the UK, and it was actually had pushed out the main original Wuhan strain and became the predominant virus basically last April. And then the Delta strain has become more dominant and has pushed out that Alpha variant, even though there's still some that are out there. But it's the Delta variant right now that is the predominant strain that we see spreading throughout the United States.
Okay. And just to piggyback on Councilor Meinke's comment on the booster, is it feasible to try to target the proteins to act a little more accordingly with that, or is that just not realistic?
Yeah, I mean, what they can do is they can actually readjust the vaccine to be able to target a specific variant. It takes a little bit of time for them to accommodate that. And that's one of the things that I think the pharmaceutical companies are actually looking at. We haven't gotten to that point. And I think that at the national level, what they're more concerned about right now is getting people who need an initial vaccination and to be fully vaccinated, the opportunity to use the vaccine stock to be able to accomplish that. If we're able to do that, then we're going to be able to protect our hospitals from becoming overrun. What we're seeing down in places like Mississippi, Louisiana, some places in Florida, are that their hospitals are filling up with COVID patients, and they don't have any additional capacity to be able to handle the regular things like heart attack, stroke, those types of things, accidents. So, we are trying very hard, and the vaccine is one of the best ways to be able to keep people out of the hospitals and protect that capacity that we have to be able to handle just the regular things that we do on a daily basis.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Pedrejko?
Yeah, it seems to me, Charles, that this is going to turn into something like our process with the flu. Every year we're going to be getting, there's going to be a different strain or different variant every year, and we're going to be getting different COVID shots every year, probably.
Yeah, and that is very likely that we get into a point to where we can manage this disease. And if we have a high enough vaccination rate against things, it will be something like that, to where it'll become a seasonal epidemic as influenza is. So we'll be able to manage that disease that way. I hope that that's the case. The challenge that we have is, we're dealing with a living organism, and it does a very good job at adapting, as I said from the beginning. This virus is incredibly opportunistic. So when it gets, an opportunity gets taken away from it to propagate, they will evolve to be able to look for ways to continue to grow. So that is something that we have to continue to watch. Seasonal vaccinations may be something that we may take up, but we're not even there yet. We need to get through this first round of vaccinations first.
I have just a question. Initially, when COVID-19 started, Newington's numbers were very high, and it was some of it was due to the fact that we have several long-term care facilities in town. Plus, we had the group homes and whatever. So it was the elderly in our town who are the most vulnerable and pushing up the numbers. And now it seems that the younger generation, or the younger population, is driving the spike in numbers. But I'm just wondering, is this variant invading our long-term care facilities and residential care facilities and group homes?
Not to a great extent. I have heard anecdotally that there's been some nursing homes in the state that have had high COVID numbers and are having to react at this point. So they're doing daily testing. They're trying to be able to enact some protective measures in those homes. We've done a pretty good job, of being able to vaccinate at the older levels, where we do have some opportunities as the younger. And I will say this, we cannot be complacent even among those who have been vaccinated and who are in the older populations. They do, can catch this particular virus even though they've been vaccinated. And what we worry about with an older population is the comorbidities. Even though they don't get very ill from this, or they may not solely go into the hospital because of COVID-19, the stress on the system with morbidities may push them over that limit.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Counselor Nagel?
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, I'd like to know if you have any more specific statistics. I know you gave it the state positive statistics, but do you have any for more local for Newington?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm trying to filter the data so I can give you exactly for what Newington has. I'm just trying to get the right number in there. So,
do you want me to ask you another question while you're trying?
Yeah, go ahead and ask me another question, and I'll continue to search for it. Got it.
Okay.
As of today, we have in Newington 2,778 cases, total cases. Total deaths stands now at 102. And the death number has been, staying at like 101 for several weeks. So it's been climbing very slowly. So we just went over up to 102 deaths on the 22nd of July.
Is there any statistic for locally, number of positive cases?
They don't do positivity for local tests as far as that's concerned. In general, it's similar to what we see statewide.
Okay, and from what I've gathered, there's an ebb and flow that we should see yearly to one case or not, one, whether it be flu-like or whatever. Has a pattern been created with this virus and its mutation that says, like, during certain months, there may very well be a spike as opposed to other months, as we see with the flu? Or is it just there is no pattern yet?
I mean, I think that trying to be able to describe a definitive pattern right now would be a little premature. What we've seen just in the last 2 years that we've been dealing with it is generally in the summertime, we do see the cases drop down like we did here in the past several weeks from the end of May through June and into July, that their case numbers have gone down in both years. We think that a lot of that has to do with people being outside much more, because we've found that this is an airborne virus. Being outside does have a tendency to disperse it fairly well. There's also been some thought and study that heat and humidity has a tendency to break this down, which is why even in the midst of high numbers, down south, they don't see quite as bad as what we had during the peak season. It's still, I believe anecdotal. There's not a lot that they can say about that particularly. But, I think that what we're seeing right now is a rise in these cases as we're in the midst of our summertime. So, I would just encourage everybody to continue to do the things that have kept us safe thus far. Those 3 W's really do make a difference, especially if you're not vaccinated. So wearing a mask where you are in close contact with people, washing your hands, and watching your distance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay. Thank you very much, Charles.
Thank you. Y'all stay safe out there.
You as well. Thanks. All right, next item this evening is an update from Chief Clark from our police department on the townwide policing efforts. I had asked the chief, he was going to be here this evening to discuss another topic as well. So I had asked if he would be kind enough to give us an update on what's been going on in town recently and the police department's efforts, because as you know, we hear a lot about some of the incidents around town in terms of break-ins, motor vehicle issues, kind of an uptick in things. And so I wanted the chief to at least have an opportunity to let us know what they're working on or what they're doing as much as he can tell us, because I know the police department is doing everything they possibly can to help us out, but I really thought it would be worthwhile to hear straight from the chief what's going on. So chief, it's all yours.
Great, thanks for having me. The car breaks and stolen cars continue to be a major problem. As of the other day, we're up to 265 car breaks. The stolen cars are a little less than what we had last year, but overall, larcenies are up. There's been a number of major incidents that have occurred around the area. New Britain last night had a vehicle with juveniles in it, ram a police car and totaled the police car. The biggest challenge for us is apprehension, and I'll give you a couple of examples. Last night, an officer spotted a car that was listed in an intelligence bulletin as being stolen and being involved in car breaks and some other crimes. Seen on Cedar Street. The officer followed it, attempted to stop it, and then the car took off. And again, for the pursuit policy, there was no chase. Last week, we received more information from New Britain about a car that was involved in car breaks. The officer was checking a residential area. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning, spotted the car, backed into somebody's driveway, and there was a suspect going through the car in the driveway. The suspect spotted the officer, jumped into the rear passenger seat. The officer pulled in the driveway in an effort to block in the car, and the car took off across the front lawn and out onto Maple Avenue and fled. Again, our pursuit policy prohibits us from chasing. We're working on a couple of things right now, one of which is really involves the catalytic converters, because we're seeing a huge uptick in that. We've had a number of vehicles with the catalytic converter stolen, which includes the senior center buses, which are now parked in the parking lot of the police department to keep them safe. There's something we're working on now. Obviously, I can't get into it because I don't want to give up our trick that we're trying to do to try to apprehend the catalytic converter thieves. To date, we're up to 1,300 location checks. The officers are out there checking these areas, the commercial areas that are prone to catalytic converter thefts, the residential areas that are prone to car breaks and stolen cars, not to mention the fact that they're also responding to their calls for service. So, I mean, the challenge is immense. They're doing the best they can. But again, it's just difficult when you see the vehicle, you try to stop it and it takes off, and there's really nothing you can do. And I don't want to be cynical here, but it's almost like we're getting good at letting people go, because essentially that's what you're doing. You see them, and then you make that effort, and they take off, and they know you're not going to chase them. And again, it feels like, I'm at the theater in a one-act play, and we never get out of the first act. It's the same thing over and over again. At the regional level, I can tell you I have a meeting tomorrow. The Office of Policy and Management is putting up $5 million to the cities will be really the epicenters. So the cities will get the money, and then they're going to create regional task forces to deal with the increase in violence and the stolen cars and car breaks. So I have a meeting with Chief Thody from Hartford tomorrow with a number of the suburban chiefs that are going to be a part of the task force. But again, task forces are good, don't get me wrong, but there has to be follow-up on the other end. I mean, if we're going to designate the money, the personnel resources to combat this problem, and we make arrests, there has to be follow-up on the other end. I want a return on my investment. If I'm going to do that, then I want to know that there's going to be follow-through with the courts, that there's going to be penalties, there's going to be consequences, there's going to be accountability. So that's going to be my question tomorrow at the meeting. This task force is great. It brings everybody together at a regional level to combat the crime. So we need that follow-up on the other end from the courts. If we don't get that, then what's the point of just arresting people and not getting any return? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Chief, I know you and I talked about this, but explain to everybody what's happening realistically. You're catching people, and what's happening when they go to court.
It's first of all, it's very difficult to catch people because they're just, back in my day, and I'll give you an example. I had a stolen car one day, and I'm not saying this is right, but this was many, many years ago. I was a patrolman. We had a stolen car out of Caldors. We're at 5 in Raleigh, and I chased the stolen car from the Berlin Turnpike all the way to the Colt Building on 91. I mean, and that's what went on. And I'm not advocating we return to that, but because we're not able to make those apprehensions, they're not getting into the system. And the state is very good about saying, well, you know, arrests are down. Well, yeah, they're down because we're not making the apprehension because of the restrictions that have been placed on us.
Right.
But those that are getting into the system, there's no consequences. There's a feeling that they want services in lieu of incarceration or punishable consequences. That's the underlying feeling right now. It's about social services, providing services. And their kids are not even getting that. They're essentially getting nothing. And because they're getting nothing, you know, we're just setting them up for failure for their adult years. If we don't control the problem now as juveniles, they're going to learn that they can get away with this, and they're going to carry that into their adult years when they're going to get arrested, and then they're going to enter the adult system, and then they're going to get incarcerated. So what they're trying to prevent, they're actually setting these kids up for that in the future. So if the feeling is we got to deal with it now, we'll deal with it, but they're just not doing that from where I sit. I mean, there's been a lot of public outcry. There's a lot of frustration, and not a lot is happening. I just don't see it. And the frustration level is through the roof. It's through the roof with law enforcement. It's through the roof with the public. And the public is getting extremely concerned about their safety. And I'll give you some data on pistol permits. In a typical year, we do about 140 to 150 pistol permits a year. Last year, we did 200. This year, we are already up to 381 pistol permits. So that gives you an indication of how people feel. You know, and I know a lot of people in town, and I see some of the names coming through, and I would never imagine that these people would ever get a firearm or a pistol permit. You're seeing elderly couples get pistol permits, young kids, 21, 22, people in their 70s, and everybody in between are getting pistol permits. So there's a general concern for their safety, and this is the result. Everybody's getting a firearm, and more firearms out there. I mean, that's a whole nother debate. You know, most people back in the day got firearms for recreational shooting. Not now. It's not recreation. It's about personal safety and personal protection. And that just gives you an indication that people feel as though the police can't protect them, nor can the criminal justice system. So they need to arm themselves to protect themselves. That's a huge jump in pistol permits. And I think it's going to continue. And if we don't get things done the way we think we should get it done to solve the problem, this is just going to continue. It's not going to stop. And as bad as it is right now, this is my personal opinion, I don't even think we've reached the pinnacle yet. I think it's going to get worse than what we're seeing now, because I don't see a whole lot of things being done right now.
Right. We have a bunch of hands up, Chief. Do you mind if I have
Sure.
some people chime in?
Sure.
Mr. Chapman, you were first.
Yes, I just want to have Steve explain that, yes, the state would like to see, and the courts would like to see social services to be the primary responder, but explain, Steve, if you would, how social services departments even know what's going on. Aren't they having the same problem you're having with identifying? Because you're the identifiers when you pull these people over, but if you're not pulling them over, how would social services even know about them?
You're correct. They're not going to know. So unless we make the apprehension and get them into the system, unless, you know, there's other referrals from schools or DCF, you're exactly right. They're not going to know. You know, and one of the things I think it's important for everybody to understand, because there's been a lot of discussion about juvenile detention and how, you know, kids get put into detention. And there is a feeling that I've heard a few things that, maybe the police need to be retrained because they don't know how to fill out the form to get these kids in detention. The detention protocols have changed since 2017, 2018, and it is very difficult to get a kid into detention. And just to give you an example, and this is the law, no child may be placed in detention unless a judge determines, based on all available facts, that there is probable cause to believe that the child has committed the acts alleged. I mean, you arrest somebody, you got to have probable cause. So you got to have that there to begin with. And there is no appropriate, less restrictive alternative available. Well, what is that? There's either detention or you let them go. I don't know what the other alternatives are that are available. I don't think there is any. It's either detention or they get released to their parents, guardians, or DCF, or who is ever responsible for the child. Now, things that they should consider that they don't is, a strong probability that the child will run away prior to a court hearing. I mean, we had that here with a juvenile that we arrested and was a suspect in stolen cars. We had actually arrested him for a marijuana charge. He was awarded the state. He was in DCF control, called DCF. They came down and basically said, he's a runaway. We have no control of this kid. And our response was, well, based on the criteria, we can't put him in detention. So we're releasing him into your custody because you're responsible for him. So we did that. And what happens? He runs away. And 3 days later, he's found murdered in Hartford. He was shot and killed. So there's an example. Probability that the child will commit or attempt to commit other offenses, injurious to the child or to the community. I mean, these are things that need to be added into the protocols. So, when they come up, it makes it a little easier to get these kids in detention. But the bottom line is there is no political will, and I'm not trying to play politics here. I'm just saying it like it is. There is no political will up at the Capitol to incarcerate or put kids in detention. There's not. And they're just letting them out and running freely, causing havoc and putting other people's at risk. We had an incident here in town about a month ago. Poor guy's pumping gas up on the Berlin Turnpike. He's pumping gas. Juvenile comes up to him, engages him in conversation. Another kid comes up, sucker punches him in the back of the head, knocks him to the ground, and then the 3 juveniles start beating him. They try to steal his car, but he didn't have the key fob in the car. He had it in his pocket, so they couldn't get the car, but they just stole articles out of the car and fled in 2 other stolen cars. So we're not immune to it, but it's frustrating. It really is.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We have a few more hands up. Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, Chief, I know this council several months ago sent a letter to our state representatives and our state senator asking for action or some kind of a change in the law so we could kind of combat this. Was anything done from your point of view at the state capitol this term to make this better from your perspective?
No, nothing was done. And really, Newington was at the beginning of that. I think we were probably one of the first communities that did that. And there's been a number of others that have followed suit. You had Glastonbury, they did it recently. There's been a few others. So, I don't know how many months ago that was. That had to be, 6 months ago that we did that. And
I believe it was
all the public outcry. Yeah, nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is things have gotten more serious. That's what's changed.
Right. And just for my own edification or knowledge, did any of our senators or representatives contact you for your opinion?
Yeah, there was one that contacted me, yes.
Okay, thanks. Only one out of the 4, right?
Well, there's Gary Turco contacted me, and then I have spoken, and actually Kerry Woods met with the mid-state chiefs to talk about the problem.
Thank you.
Counselor Braverman. Sharon, your hand's up. Did you want to speak?
Hi. Chief, I have a question. When a citizen, yes. How do I?
Go ahead,
unmute?
Sharon.
She's on mute.
Yeah, she just remuted. We were hearing you, Sharon. There you
Here.
go.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. All right.
Go ahead.
Wait a minute. I'm okay now?
I can hear you.
All right. So Chief, when a citizen applies for a permit, is there training required? Am I
Yeah.
still muted? Wait a minute.
You have to go through an NRA familiarization class. Are you proficient in the use of firearms? It's not a proficiency. You're not tested on the firearm use as you are going through the laws and safe use of the firearm and familiarization, but there is no proficiency.
Okay, so anybody, well, there is you have to get the license, you have to have
There is a background
what?
check. There is a background check.
no outstanding warrants, some
Right. There is a background check.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
First, just kind of following up on what Councilor Menke had
I'm good.
indicated. The state legislators did, kind of announce that they did take action, but it was like creating a task force to study the problem and trying to penalize some of the adults who entice the youth into crime, but nothing was done about the youth themselves. So I can't quite share their enthusiasm for what was accomplished as a result of our letter. But secondly, I was reading about the $5 million that Governor Lamont set aside for the funding to help cities and towns address gun violence, car thefts, and overdoses. But according to Chief Thode, the money has to be spent on overtime and personnel. So like you said, I mean, I don't care, Newington can hire another 100 police officers on the street, but if all you can do is wave the peace sign and throw roses at these people, I mean, more staffing is not going to help unless you can, the officers can do something to stop the problem. So I do hope that tomorrow your meeting will be a little bit more productive, and perhaps the state and Governor Lamont will loosen up the funding to enable action to be taken rather than just hire more officers whose basically hands are tied.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of that is everybody's hurting for staffing. You got to have staffing to throw at the problem. And yeah, to your point that, if you do it, you got to have, follow up to that, especially in the courts. But, everybody is struggling for staffing. Hartford is struggling. I mean, we're struggling. And it's just, yeah, we have a serious problem, but I don't have the staffing to be able to, put a lot of emphasis on that problem. I mean, we have 4 vacancies now with 2 people out hurt. And, within the next 6 months, I can end up with another 4. It's going to be devastating to our department. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions if we're not able to replace these people with the services that were being provided. It's just, something's got to give. Either one, we lower our hiring standards, which obviously we don't want to do, or two, we cut back on the services that we're providing. Something has to give because we can't find anybody. One of those vacancies is over a year old. It's just, we're hurting. And if we don't start replacing the people that retire, as more people retire, our staffing is going to be critical. It's going to be very serious if we're not able to replace those. Nobody wants to get into the profession now. Officers have been vilified, and nobody wants to enter the profession for a variety of reasons. And so it's difficult.
I just have one more, if you can comment. It seems to me that, people are talking, when you talk about juvenile crime, people are thinking that there's these, 13 and 14-year-olds, having, a couple beers and riding around, trying to open cars. But to me, I think, hasn't this escalated a little bit beyond just juvenile crime? This seems very methodic, very organized, and it's increasingly violent in their actions. I mean, I'm not sure it can just all be classified now as juvenile crime.
You're correct. It's serious. It's escalated. I mean, there was an individual in Hartford the other day where he confronted some suspects trying to steal his car or breaking into his car, and he was shot at. There was a woman in Glastonbury that was shot at. There's the incident that I described that happened at a gas station on the Berlin Turnpike. Yeah, it's escalating, and it has been for several months. It's getting more and more serious. I mean, you had a police cruiser in New Britain last night. They rammed the police car. I mean, that's the extent that this has gone. And, again, as it's escalated and we've seen it, and I for the life of me, I don't understand why more affirmative action isn't being taken at the state level up at the Capitol. I'm just, it's beyond, I just don't understand. How far does it have to go before any action is taken? This problem's not going away. It's not. In fact, it's going to get worse if no action is taken.
Well, Chief, we've seen it getting worse each and every day. Like you said, we've just today I saw on press conference about the pursuit from, I believe it started in Hartford and went into West Hartford.
Yes, and I can tell you that, and I can tell you that car was in town last night. That car that was involved in the crash, that car that was involved in that crash was in town last night and was seen by one of our officers on the midnight shift. So again, our officers are out there. They're checking. They're doing everything that's being asked of them, but their hands are tied, and it's frustrating. It really is. But yeah, I mean, there's an example where the car was involved in some major crimes. It fled from the police, and it crashed.
Yep. All right, I see Counselor Minor, you have your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just real quick, Chief. I mean, the example last night that you're referring to with the Infiniti that crashed in West Hartford, those three were not identified by name, but they were identified by age, and they're all adults now.
Yep.
And those, to me, would be the graduates of our juvenile programs that have just now made it into the big leagues. And my concern is, as you stated, that they are escalating and have continued to escalate over the last several months. That, Glastonbury, a shot was fired at the house. The Hartford incident that you referenced from the car last night was, shot somebody directly. So the issue comes down to what, if anything, can we do in the short term to try to do, there has to be some, is it, sharing of intelligence between agencies? Is it, I know we've had the discussion in the past of using aviation to be able to remotely watch these individuals and try to follow where they're going and catch them in a safe environment in that way. And we heard directly from the state police, I believe it was a colonel that was on one of our calls with us, that said that that was not something that was viable. Is that the best way to try to escalate this on a state level, is to try to utilize those assets better?
You know, I think it's, you gotta remove them from the street. I mean, our hands are tied in our ability to make apprehensions. So my thing is, and you gotta consider using ankle monitors, and you gotta put kids into detention to keep the public safe, and in some cases, keep them safe from themselves. You gotta take them out of that environment. You can't, they're beyond anyone's control. Their parents can't control them. In the case that I described to you, DCF couldn't control him and he ended up dead. These kids are uncontrollable and they're going to continue to act out and put others at risk. And when they've demonstrated that, then you got to take the necessary steps to keep them away from the public and causing harm. And whether it's an ankle bracelet, and if they cut it off, then they go to detention. If it's, you know, a number of car breaks or car thefts or whatever, and they pose a risk to the public, they go to detention. And then if you say you want services, well, then get them the services. Use detention for punishable consequences along with services. Don't do one or the other, do them together. But you got to keep them away from the public to keep the public safe, because obviously people are being put at risk. And, you know, people feel that way. You could see that with the number of pistol permits.
Now,
Absolutely.
the case of West Hartford, Chief, I think it was last week, if I remember correctly, mid-afternoon on New Britain Avenue, where a car was carjacked with an infant in the car. That press conference was the first time that I can recall in recent memory that I believe it was the captain of West Hartford Police Department stated that they were getting in front of a judge that night for detention of that juvenile. Do you know what the outcome of that was? Is that something that they're now opening their doors to more, or is that just an anomaly just by the severity of that case?
I don't know. I don't know. When you have somebody, I mean, that's a pretty serious crime. That goes beyond, I mean, that's kidnapping. You know, in those circumstances, you'd fill out the take into custody order, present it to a judge. They're talking about keeping data on that now, how many times the police fill out the form for detention, and how many times they're accepted and how many times they're denied by a judge. They're going to start keeping track of that. But when the crimes are serious, you fill out that order, it's up to the judge. And the criteria that's used is, as I described previously, that's the criteria. So it's up to the judge. It's out of the police's hands. You know, once we fill out that form and hand it off to a judge to review, it's out of our hands and it's in the hands of the judge, whether or not they want to put the kid in detention or let them go.
All right, thanks, Chief.
All right, next we have Counselor Nagel. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Steve, it all comes back to, and I know this is a difficult question to answer in some respects, what can we do as a council? What can individuals do in their small way to try to open the eyes of our state legislators and the governor and the courts to assist you and other police departments to get something accomplished, at least to lessen this situation? I know you've said it's going to get more serious. Do you have any suggestions, or do you have anything that will really make some impact, you think?
Beyond what we've already done, we've done everything. I mean, going back 6 months ago, I don't know how much more you can do. You've wrote a letter. We've talked about it. it's just, it's whether or not they have the political will to make the necessary changes that need to be made. And with all this public outcry, this council, mayor, town manager advocating for change here, and all the other communities that have been involved, and yet still nothing gets done. So I don't know what more anybody can do. I think it's up to the citizens now. Petitions, whatever, voice your concerns. That's how change is going to get made. It's just, I don't know what more this council can do, what more I can do. We've said everything that needs to be said. And again, not a lot is getting done. And that's what is so frustrating. And I hear it here in the hallways from the officers. You just hear it. And it's, the wind has been taken out of their sails. The enthusiasm level, I've seen a drop, because it's like, what's the point? It's just, it's troubling. It really is. And I don't know if we don't get our act together, and really it's a societal problem. It's everybody's problem, because we're going to own this, and we're owning it now. If we don't get our act together, it's going to get even worse than it is now. And people are going to lose their lives. We've seen it, and it's going to keep happening and keep happening. And when is enough going to be enough? And it extends beyond that. It's, these kids are operating these cars recklessly. I mean, is it going to take, a mom with her toddler in the car seat driving through an intersection when one of these kids in a stolen car blows a light and buries the car into the side of the car with the toddler in it and kills the toddler and the mother? Is that going to get us to make the changes that need to be made? What's it going to take? I'm frustrated. Everybody's frustrated. And again, for the life of me, I don't understand why things aren't being done. The problem is right there. Find a solution. If you're not going to work on a solution, step aside and let somebody do it so it can get done. Because if it doesn't, people are going to continue to get seriously hurt. And in some cases, they're going to die. And that's a fact. We've seen it, and it's going to continue.
I know, but I'll say it anyway. I'm sure everyone here on the council shares your frustration, and whatever frustration we have, I'm sure nowhere compares to the frustration that you and your department has. They're facing this up front. Is it a lesson in futility for us to draft another letter to our state legislature and to the governor? It sounds like that may fall on deaf ears from what you've just been saying.
Yeah, I mean, if that's the choice, and maybe at some point they will listen. I don't know what else. I don't know what more to say. It's just this is beyond anything I've ever seen in my, how long I've been doing this job, 35 years. I've never seen anything like this in my life. I haven't. And, and we're dealing with all the other police reforms now that I got psychological screenings that happened on Monday and again tomorrow as part of the police accountability bill. I mean, they're focused on that, but this problem they're not so much focused on. I again, for the life of me, I don't understand. And again, if things don't change, it's just going to get worse, and there's going to be more tragedies. And I'm preaching to the choir.
You definitely are. On a more minor scale, but might be helpful. The other night, a policeman came to our house saying, I noticed that we had installed a Ring doorbell camera over our garage, and we just done it. Would it? And obviously we showed him what we could to see if it would help it off and whether he could see off it. Should our local community, if they have not, contact the police, tell them that we have those kinds of devices that will assist perhaps in a small way, but maybe in a major way with various kinds of thefts or whatever may happen.
Yeah, I mean, people could do that, but I mean, that now, because everybody, that's the first, when we do a neighborhood canvas, that's the first thing we ask, and that's the first thing we're looking for. So if there's a crime that we're investigating,
Can inform you if they have them.
they can contact our support services division.
Mayor,
Okay, I
if
just wanted to know if that would be helpful, if those who wish to could come forward and let you know that it is there, so they don't have to go up and down the street just to see who has some kind of camera device. It'd be better if you knew up front.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I may interrupt, you have a long agenda tonight. And I know this is an important topic, but I would suggest that we might want to move on at this stage of the game, unless you're not going to get through your agenda tonight.
I was thinking that too. Counselor Donahue, I know you hadn't spoken yet and had your hand up. Did you want to add something quickly?
I can't remember, Chief, you were on another show with us and you had spoken about your frustration about going down to the Capitol and sitting in front of these guys, and it was like talking to a brick wall. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that for us again.
Yeah, I mean, I've testified for the Connecticut Chiefs Police Association on some issues, juvenile related, and again, I think it falls on deaf ears. I think when their minds have been made up and they have their agenda, that's the way they're going to lean, and that's how they're going to handle a situation. So I think it's important that the public speak up and elected officials such as yourselves to voice your concern, and that's going to get the change. You'll get more change that way than having it come from me at this point.
Which is a real shame. I mean, you're the professional.
Like to think so.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. Okay, I think we're all set with this topic for now. And certainly if you folks think of more questions, you can always ask the town manager to get in touch with the chief and go that route. The next item on our agenda this evening is the discussion of the panhandling ordinance language. And we have the chief here with us as well. So Chief, we did get 9 different towns ordinances to take a peek at. We discussed this at our last meeting, and I know some of the counselors are really looking to move forward with an ordinance. We wanted to hear your take on whether that would be helpful or not, because one of the concerns that was raised was essentially if they're out there asking for money and we impose a fine, what good will that do was one of the concerns. And just in general, would it be helpful to you if we did move forward in that direction? So I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Sure. We're seeing more and more of it, but it's almost like it's become an accepted practice. When it first started, we just receive a lot of complaints. We don't really see a lot of complaints anymore. With no town ordinance, the way we handle it now, if there's a panhandler at the off ramps getting in and out of traffic, creating a hazard, then we could take action that way. Reckless use of a highway by a pedestrian, that's a $75 fine. If they're on private property and the owner doesn't want them there, then we can give them a simple trespass fine, which is $92. So we can enforce it. But again, sometimes that's after the fact. And if you want to prevent, say, a rear end accident at one of the off ramps or on the Berlin Turnpike, it's almost like you'd have to wait for something to happen before you took any affirmative action. So with the ordinance, you could probably be a little bit more proactive. When this person's out there, you can take action before something happens, as opposed to waiting for something to happen. So again, I think it's a policy decision by the council whether or not they want to proceed further with this. I know we had discussed it a number of years ago, and there was some concern by the town attorney about free speech. So that's something that, you'd have to have that conversation with him about that.
Yeah, and that was my recollection, was that he had a concern about it, violating people's rights, and that if we could enforce it, like you mentioned, in the ways that you're already enforcing it, that might be a better route. One of the questions that came up also last week was based on, we've seen a lot of people now on the Berlin Turnpike specifically, where there are posted signs that say no pedestrian traffic. So we were wondering if that's something that could be addressed as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's an angle we could take. You know, there are people up there. There's people that live in and out of the motels that, cross the turnpike or walk along the turnpike, to go to a convenience store or get food, over a Price Chopper or where have you. So, I mean, you got to take that into account. That's their only mode of transportation. But again, if they're on the turnpike and it's creating a hazard for the vehicles, we could take action.
Okay, great. I'm going to open it up for council comment or question. Councilor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, I know that, it's increasingly become a problem with just the other week, there was 9 individuals going across between Main Street, Newington, and Rowley, and it almost seemed like on every corner. My concern is that there's going to be either an accident or a secondary accident with people stepping out into traffic into the next lane over and having people not pull up to the traffic loops because they're concerned about being parked right next to anybody. That's my concern. And I see it more of a safety issue than a First Amendment speech, but it's just a matter of I just can't think of any other way outside of trying to push them along. I know Vernon did historically have an issue with their shopping centers when I had maintenance oversight of several, and they did change their ordinances, and it did effectively work for us. That you just didn't have that incidence of panhandlers at the 3083 connection out there. So just curious to your thoughts.
But it's funny you mentioned that because I was in Vernon as the captain right around that time. And you're exactly right. They were in that 8330 area. And again, it gives you a little bit more leverage to be proactive with a town ordinance that prohibits it. I would be in support of that. It's just, but I'm not a legal scholar. I don't know how this applies to, First Amendment rights. So that would have to, be reviewed by legal, the town attorney. But if we could do it, I would be in support of it for public safety reasons.
Yeah, and I did speak with some patrol officers in Vernon, and they were able to at least confirm with me that it had slowed their concerns down with that type of issue, and they just weren't around anymore. And I asked if they had been challenged on it, and the only thing he was able to tell me was there were some challenge about being on a state right away, but they had even taken steps to work with DOT to try to get their coordination and acceptance of the policies, and it worked for them.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Minor. Anyone else? All right. I think at this point, folks, it's our decision as to whether we want to move forward with something. If we want to draft language, use one of the ordinances that we have been presented with, or just let it go. So I'm not sure how anyone feels about that right now. Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to see if we could pursue it with having the town attorney do a current review of Vernon's ordinance, because apparently that is one that's been time tested, to see what his opinion and concern is. And again, we already have the existing statutes in place regarding pedestrian traffic on the turnpike as well as on the highway off ramps. Pedestrians are already prohibited. So it's basically allowing the chief to be proactive rather than reactive in terms of having these, accidents or secondary accidents. So I would ask if we consider review of the Vernon ordinance as it's written.
Okay. Counselor Menke?
Yeah, I would agree. We could have someone take, Attorney O'Connell will take a look at the ordinances
Okay.
that are.
All right.
Provide
I'm sorry, I'm having some internet issues, guys.
you, especially the Vernon one. Also,
too.
the tools already to kind of manage this, we can.
Okay. We can certainly do that. We can forward this on to the town attorney and have him review it and then come back at our next council meeting on the 10th. Counselor Minor, did you have another comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one final point. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, that we did have either an ordinance or enforcement actions taken quite some time ago for these type of activities. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, and I'd have to research it, but there may have been some infractions issued for reckless use of a highway by a pedestrian for that reason. I'd have to research it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we're all set with that. We'll move on now to, thank you, Chief, very much for your efforts. I know we appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on now. Next item on the agenda is Economic Development Employee Incentive Program. This is you, Mr. Chapman.
Yes, we followed up on some of the comments that were made at the last meeting about this particular ordinance proposal. The thinking is that we would not recommend having incentives for land only. It has to be part of a building. We really want to get the space occupied in the buildings. So we're suggesting one change be made is as you read through that the 1,000 square foot or less of building space be occupied, and then it continues to go up in increments. Other than that, it's exactly the way we proposed it the other day. I have got good feedback. I did get one letter from what appeared to be a business owner down in the center. He was totally opposed to it. He feels that the businesses in the center should get tax reductions rather than employees getting incentives to seek out new businesses to come in. There was a 3-page document, but he went on to other issues as well as the incentive program.
Okay. Council thoughts? Counselor Menke.
Again, I think this is a good proposal. I think it's a better way to make the all of our employees part of the economic development team. In a sense, any new business that moves into town and takes up an existing space does lower people's taxes because there's somebody there that's taking up space and generating tax revenue. So in a sense, it does lower everybody else's taxes. So I think it's a good program, and I see we should go forward with it.
Thank you, Counselor Menke. Counselor Nagel.
Yes, I agree. I do think it's a good program, but the suggestion that Mr. Chapman just was made by someone in small business in the center of town, in some way, something could be applied to that as well, if indeed we deem it to be something that's appropriate. So doing this doesn't preclude doing the other necessarily. Of course, we'd need to discuss it more before we'd move on. But at this point, this seems to be a positive way of bringing business into building space that is empty at the present time.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? I will say that, Mr. Chapman, when we brought you on, we had made a decision to eliminate economic development consulting position that we had. And the reason for that was that you had assured us that you and your staff could find a way to manage the economic development in town. And we agreed to give you a shot at it. And so far, you have really used some out of the box thinking and forward thinking, I believe, to move us ahead in the economic development world. And we have made great strides. People know that Newington is open to business. They are coming to us. They are choosing to bring their businesses here. It's been a wonderful change, I would say, in the last year. So I'm really pleased with that. And I think it only makes sense to incentivize the employees that are working so hard on your team in kind of an extra capacity, so to speak, from their regular daily duties. So to me, this makes great sense. And I appreciate your out of the box thinking with it. We do have a lengthy resolution to make sure we cover all the pieces of this proposal. So who would like to go ahead and read that in for us? And don't make me pull the school teacher. I'll call on you. All right, Counselor Donahue, thank you.
No, if I just get off of mute. Resolution, Economic Development Employee Incentive Program. Whereas the economic development within the town of Newington affects all businesses, residents, and employees, and whereas the ability to enlist the assistance of town employees to recommend and refer businesses to relocate to the town of Newington is a benefit to the local tax base. And whereas an employee introduces a business to Newington and that business locates their operation to Newington, then upon their arrival, an incentive payment will be made to the successful employee as follows. The incentive issued to any successful employee will be based on the following scale. 1,000 square feet or less of building space occupied by the new business will entitle the employee to a one-time payment of $250. 1,001 to 500,000 square feet of building space results in a one-time reward of $500. 5,001 to $10,000, square feet of building space results in a one-time reward of $750. 10,001 to 25,000 square feet of building space results in a one-time reward of $1,000. 25,001 to 75,000 square foot of business space results in a one-time reward of $2,000. 75,001 or more square feet of building space results in a one-time reward of $2,500. Now therefore be resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby endorses and approves the implementation of the Economic Development Employee Incentive Program effective August 1st, 2021.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Donahue, seconded by Counselor Menke. Any further discussion on this item? All right, well, all those in favor say aye.
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 Did we get everybody? I know it's hard. We have to unmute our mics. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Moving on now, the next item for discussion this evening is the Capital Improvement Program. The council under resolution 2006-114 had created the Capital Improvement Committee to assist in determining the long and short-term needs for capital projects within the town. The discussion at our last meeting was really around the fact that the committee has not kind of served in a way that has been extremely helpful in the last several years, and perhaps not serving in the way it was intended to when it was created. And so before us this evening is the idea of the possibility of stopping the committee or dissolving the committee and allowing the town staff to handle bringing forward the plan directly to the council. In the past, the committee had taken it from the town manager and then made a lot of changes or had the ability to make changes and then bring it to the council for consideration. So this would essentially eliminate that one step, and it would still fall under the purview of this council to approve and or make changes to the plan that's brought forward. And so that is what's before us this evening for consideration. We do have a resolution in our packet to repeal the Capital Improvement Projects Committee, if that's what we should choose to do after discussion. So I will open the floor for comment or question. Counselor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only question I had, and it's a follow-up to our discussion when it was first brought up, is how are we tracking projects specifically, and whether or not this deserves another year before we make a permanent change, because we really never had an opportunity off of last fiscal year to see how it would develop and operate, because we really didn't pursue a lot of projects with COVID. And now that we're currently in the 21-22 fiscal year, the facilities director that would, in all likelihood have a large chunk of that capital improvements funding is not in place yet to allow him to really decide, where to move forward. So my only question would be, does this make more sense to just let us go through a full year of actually seeing how it operates before we make a decision to dissolve the previous form that we had?
I guess I'll let you, Mr. Chapman, if you want to answer it, but I guess in my estimation, having served on that committee and been chair in the past, I don't see that there's much difference. So in other words, the plan was always brought forward by town staff, so that wouldn't change. The only thing this changes is that intermediate step of the committee kind of making changes before bringing it to the council. It doesn't change the way the plan is developed, so to speak, because that still would come from town staff the same way it did in the past. Mr. Chapman, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, you're right, Mayor. What I found in the first year I was back here was that the committee did meet under, I believe, the leadership of Councilor Nagel. I came into it after the process that had started, and I didn't find that the efforts that were put in by all of the committee members were really resulting in a change from what the administration had already been thinking. Now, there were some changes made by that particular committee. However, some of those changes may have not been the wisest thing at the time. I mean, we now have the Owens report, which kind of lays out for all of the facilities what we should be doing. We know that we've done our study of the streets and vehicles. We now have a lot more information than we had before. And I would agree that it is a step that is, as Councilor Minor says, I mean, you could leave the resolution the way it is and do the same thing as you did last year, which was to do it on a temporary basis, experiment. We do now have our facilities manager coming on board on Friday. So we're rapidly bringing everything to where it should be moving forward. So you could do it either way. I mean, if you want to leave the resolution the way it is and maybe take an action later in the year to just suspend it again for another year, I don't see a problem with that. Either way would work for me.
Okay, Councilor Mankey.
I think we should take action now. Waiting another year doesn't seem to me to get any place different. We tried it, it worked. We let the professionals do it. It just takes one step, like the middleman. The CIP committee is the middleman of the system. It takes it out of the equation. The council still gets to look at all the CIP. We still get to question it. We still get to make any comments. It just takes the politics out of it and makes the professionals responsible for coming up with a CIP budget. The changes and the projects will get tracked the same way they get tracked now. The CIP just only meets for a couple of months and then they disappear and no one tracks them other than the professionals anyway. So I think we should move forward.
All right, thank you. Councilor Ennis?
Thank you. I don't see what the rush is. We've only been 1 month into this budget cycle under the way the CIP was done for this budget. There is no reason why we can't let it go another year. And if we want to suspend it for next year, we could go forward and do that. And if it does work, then we can abolish it next year. But I think we're rushing into this. We have not really had the full potential. We've not been able to see the full potential of how the CIP is working out this way. So I would rather wait and have it waived next year and then let us do it for 1 year and see how it works.
Councilor Nagel?
With all due respect, I think that this resolution should be put forward this year. having experienced the confusion and the how the committee worked into something that may not have intentionally have been when it was organized to begin with, and that indeed keeping it in the able hands of our town staff and with the materials and information that we now have, which our town manager has alluded to in a few minutes ago, that I believe it's time to take action as opposed to finding out that essentially the same thing applies in another year. It gives it to be more definite. If a future council wishes to go in another direction next year or beyond, they have the right to do that if so deemed. But I do think we're on the pathway to go in the right direction in terms of eliminating, if not all the political input for good or for evil, but to get a control over information that we have and having it come directly to the council as opposed to having it revisited. And then, of course, the committee with the question of Board of Ed members being on that committee and having the ability to vote on projects that were not under the purview of the Board of Ed makes it questionable as well. So I would suggest that we move forward this year.
Thank you, Councilor Nagel. Councilor Menke.
Yeah, I don't think we're rushing into this. I think we've tried it a year. We tried it during the budget season. It worked, and the CIP committee doesn't track what happens during the fiscal year anyway. They just meet sometimes in January. They come up with a plan, and then they that's the last they track it. The professionals track it anyway, so I don't think we need to worry about rushing this. I think we should move forward.
Thank you. Councilor Camillo.
I agree. We should vote on it tonight and move this forward.
Thank you. Councilor Braverman.
I'd like to vote on it and keep the capital improvement committee. I think that having that option for people is a positive, and capital improvement is a big deal for most of our townspeople and has been for our council for as long as I can remember.
Thank you. Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify that, we've tried this for a year and we're just going to keep it because it worked. We didn't do anything last year. There were essentially no capital improvement projects with the exception of completing the town hall that were done. To declare that it was done for a year and therefore it worked well, we should continue with it, just doesn't hold water. We didn't even get a test year in at this point.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Minor. Councilor Menke.
Two things. One, I think the system in the past worked where the professional staff would develop the CIP, come to CIP committee, they'd all look at it, they'd discuss it, and then they'd present it to the council. The same thing happened this year, except we just took out the CIP committee from the process. So the same process works. It just takes out that one middle step. I think it's best to take out that middle step because that's where everybody gets their political people to come out and vote for this, vote for that. And we aren't coming up with what's best for the town. We're coming up with what's best for the people who happen to come out and argue that point or those points. And I disagree with the Councilwoman Braverman that because the people like it. I mean, our job is to lead the town, and if it makes it more sense and saves money and it's more efficient, then that's the way we should go.
Thank you. I'm going to add my 2 cents here. I've raised my own hand this time. I'm going to argue the converse of the current argument. So people are saying, we haven't really given it a year, or we have given it a year. the reality is we've given the current structure many years and it hasn't worked for many years. So I'm not sure waiting to see what this new way, whether it works or not, matters. The bottom line is the current structure doesn't work, and it's been proven year after year that it doesn't work. So my rationale would be, let's stop what doesn't work. We can certainly try what we are currently trying. Nothing in our world is ever permanent. So if the current plan that we want, letting town administration handle it and taking that middle step out doesn't work for some reason, then it would be up to this council to do what's right for Newington and find a new way of handling capital improvements. Keeping the old way that doesn't work doesn't make sense, no matter how you look at it. So we could give it a year, we could give it 2 years, we could put it on hold for however long we want. The current plan isn't working as intended. So my thought process is to repeal it this evening, allow the process to happen over the next year. If we are happy, we're happy. If we're not, then this council can certainly do something to make it work for what it really is intended to be. Councilor Minor.
Thank you. I do not disagree with Mr. Chapman's statements over the last year and a half that the CIP had become pet projects more than focusing on long-term capital improvements. My only concern, as it was on our last cycle, which again, they couldn't identify specific projects because they didn't have a facilities director in place to line item out specific projects. My concern is there were large buckets that were put out versus in the old way of the capital improvement plan is you had specific line listings of dozens, if not, 50 plus or whatever the number may be, specific earmarks for those projects. And without seeing that and having it vetted before it comes before the council, to me, is doing a disservice to be able to allow people that have concerns about things that are being left out or not taken care of, to allow them the opportunity to speak, should they so choose to, at the CIP committees, where we're eliminating that step and you're basically giving them one bite at the apple when it comes to budget cycle and whether or not there's going to be that clear delineation for project costs, itemized. That's all I'm saying is the old process allowed for that. This year it didn't, just because there weren't the means to be able to do it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Menke?
Yeah, Keith, can you, when you do the CIP next year, can you line item as Representative Councilor Minor asks?
Keith, you're muted.
Yes, it's called old age. Once the staff is in place this year, it is our intention to focus in on the CIP plan and have a comprehensive plan that will carry us through the next year and the next 5 years beyond that, that hopefully will not be changed as it has been in the past, because we need to get this system into place where we don't deviate from the master plan any longer. And I think that's one of the issues that the committee was facing, because there were different people looking at it from different perspectives. And in reality, I will say that if you were to keep the committee, I don't think you would be wise to continue having Board of Education representatives on that committee. It's your budget. It's your capital improvement program.
And just a
Okay,
follow-up
thank you.
question. I believe last budget season, we had a day set aside for CIP discussion and presentation. The public would have a chance to speak at that, obviously, and they could make their wishes known if they had any, or make the suggestions known. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And just another point of clarification, we're not changing the plan. So we're not changing the way capital improvements will be handled. The plan would still be presented. It would still have that 5-year lookout. It would still have the bonded projects separate from the pay-as-you-go projects, so the plan wouldn't be changing. It really is just taking out the intermediate step of having the committee deliberate and make changes before bringing it to us. I think we're, as elected officials, it's our job to do the heavy lifting. And so I don't know, sometimes we're making decisions on a plan that comes forward having been, with changes recommended already. And so I'd like to hear from the town staff directly what they think are the priorities. And I think this makes a lot of sense to move on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, nothing's permanent. This body has the ability to recreate something that would work in the future if need be. Counselor Minor.
Just one final comment. So if I'm understanding this correctly, there would be no Board of Education representation regarding capital projects. It would only be handled through their body to come up with what they wanted to put forward to the town for consideration. How would that work?
It would be the same way it is now. So it would be developed through input. Right now, they submit their requests to the town manager's office, and the town manager incorporates that into the plan that comes forward to the committee. So it would be handled the same way in terms of formulating the plan. If I'm wrong, Mr. Chapman, or?
That's exactly the way that it works, and that we would anticipate it working that way in the future, yes.
Okay, but there wouldn't be any direct board representation though.
Not once once the board presents their budget to the town manager, they're done. Their work is done completely. Anything beyond that is really, we'll say, a hindrance, because they've submitted their budget proposal to the town through the town manager, and it's up to me, working with my staff, to prepare the final budget proposal to the town council. It doesn't go back to the Board of Education at any time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no other, oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Donahue, go ahead.
I know that for some reason I've become very bright here. I don't know why. I think this is an excellent way for us to continue to follow. I mean, we spent how much on the, overall look at all the things you need to do, plan, and, not have any outside influence distract us from that plan. I mean, this is, these are the buildings that are falling apart. These are the buildings that are going to fall apart next year. That's what we paid for the survey for, to plan our capital plan. And why have other input into it? I mean, if something comes up where, a tree falls on the building, I mean, we'll certainly change around the priority, but we have the plan. Let's follow the plan.
Thank you. Counselor Nagel.
I'd be willing to read the resolution, Mayor, if you're so deem.
That would be great. Thank you, Counselor Nagel.
Resolution, repeal the Capital Improvement Project Committee. Whereas the Town Council at a meeting held on November 14, 2006, created the Capital Improvement Project Committee under Resolution number 2006-114, and whereas the Town Council, prior to the start of the 2021-2022 budget process, suspended the existing Capital Improvement Program Committee under Resolution 2020-142, and whereas the town manager and the finance director prepared and submitted the capital improvement project plan for review and adoption during the 2020-2022 budget process. Now therefore be it resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby moves to repeal resolution number 2006-114 adopted on November 14th, 2006, and hereby disbands the Capital Improvement Project Committee.
Second.
I apologize. Seconded by Counselor Menke. By protocol, I'll ask for any further discussion. All right, seeing none, we're going to do a roll call vote on this one, please, Susan.
Counselor Anist?
No.
Counselor Braverman?
No,
Counselor Budraco?
Yes.
Counselor Camillo?
Yes.
Counselor Donahue?
Yes.
Counselor Menke,
Yes.
Counselor Minor,
No.
Counselor Nagel,
Yes.
Mayor Juliano,
Yes,
6-3.
thank you. Motion passes. We will move on now to the next item, which is discussion of the Permanent Municipal Building Commission creation. We had discussed this at our last meeting as well. We had the opportunity to review the draft language to create a permanent building committee to manage all projects within the town. The purpose of the building committee would be to have some professional staff on board, people that would serve in a volunteer capacity, but would have experience professionally in related areas to building projects. So in their professional lives. And so before us this evening, we do have draft language that would be considered part of Chapter 8 Permanent Municipal Building Committee. And in order to move this forward, we would have to solidify the language through the town attorney, certainly, if that's an area that we decided to move forward with. And this is, I thought this was not an ordinance. James, are you there?
I am.
Can you clarify that? Is it, because I don't, it's not an ordinance, it's a chapter. Help me.
This would be an ordinance as part, whoops, I'm getting a feedback there. Chapter 8 is what we keep our boards and commissions under in our current code. So this would be effectively replacing, or in this case, because we have active boards, an addition to our code until those such boards have completed their work. And then this would take over for all projects.
All right, I'm sorry, I got confused. The last one was not an ordinance, it was a resolution that we were repealing. This would be a change or an addition to the ordinance. So we would have to go ahead and schedule a public hearing once we finalize language.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I will open it up for discussion. We do have before us the draft language. We did discuss this a bit last time, but I'll go ahead and open it up for comment and question. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Yeah, I finally got a chance to review it a little bit more thoroughly. I noticed under composition, there's specific items like item number 6 and item number 7. It says that the Board of Education and Superintendent of Schools can serve as ex officio members for any project involving, school grounds or structures. And then item 7, the fire chief or chairman of the board may also be appointed as an ex officio member for any alterations to fire department buildings. But there are other departments in town who are users of specific facilities for their departments. For example, you've got the library, you've got human services, you've got the highway department, you have the historical buildings, you have parks and rec. So I was just wondering if, just suggesting, perhaps an item might be added that, or language that says, the town manager of the committee may appoint ex officio members, without voting privileges, of the sponsoring or requesting project area to serve only until the completion of the project or approval by the town councilors on the specific project. Because, many of our facilities, like I said, go beyond just the fire department or the Board of Ed. And I think user input would be important, but yet I don't want them to be, voting members either. But I think they as well can serve as temporary ex officio members. That's my first comment. And then my second comment is under item 8, under composition. It says the building official, facilities director, fire marshal, town engineer, and IT director shall be non-voting advisory members to the committee as determined by the town manager. I'm wondering, shouldn't the finance, I would think that maybe the finance director might be one of those listed as a advisory member to the committee. So those are my 2 comments. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to comment on those suggestions?
Yeah, the last comment first. Yeah, the finance director would be certainly involved in any project we have going forward. This is more specific on the building committee, not the way in which it's financed. It's more to determine what is needed to renovate or to build a new building and keep it, we'll say, within the bounds that are outlined and sought. So the finance director is involved in everything we do around here. That would be an automatic. She's going to have input into whatever we do, and if we can't afford it, then we're going to have to go back to the drawing board anyway. You can list her as one of the additional people, but the idea was that the people that were listed, like the facilities manager and the town engineer and the IT director, all those people play a part now in anything that we're going to consider as a building renovation and so forth. So I look at the finance director as a little bit different than these others, but certainly she's going to be involved in every project, yes. And I forgot what your first point was now.
And the other about adding some language where.
I would agree. Probably, I would say that the library and senior center, because they have commissions and boards that have influence and input into the operations. I wouldn't see it happening with, you had mentioned human services or highway. Those do not have boards and commissions, so that, go ahead.
No, well, again, Parks and Rec or even the Historical Society, but what I was thinking is rather than having to list departments specifically, again, just kind of make it generic and said that, the building committee or the town manager can appoint ex officio members of the sponsoring or requesting project to serve. So you don't have to, so if the event does come, where there's a historical building or the senior center or something, the space is there generically.
I would agree. We could do that. That would make it simple, and then we'd be able to include or not include whoever is appropriate. That's fine. We can make that change.
Okay, thank you.
Great suggestion, Deputy Mayor Bedrejko. Councilor Minor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, Keith, it's my understanding historically, we did have standing building committees at one time. Are you aware of the timing on that and what the composition was?
I remember having standing building committees, but I do not remember the composition and how they were appointed and for how long a period of time. I do not recall. I'm sorry.
Yeah, James, is that something that you could look up between now and the next time we discuss this regarding how it was set up initially, historically in town?
Yep, I can go through. We do have the older boards and commissions booklets. That'll be a manual process, but I can go through those and check against the town council minutes to verify how we handle that.
Yeah, I'm just curious to what the composition and makeup and how the body's appointed everybody, because this is how we had done it in the past. All right, thank you.
All right, Councilor Donahue.
Yeah, I just under, and I know we discussed this the last time, but I can't remember the wording. Under definitions, building project, we just wanted to change that to something generic to reflect, how it's listed in the charter. Because, if we have 975 in here and then we go and we change the charter to 2 million, then we got to come back and readjust this, right? So if we could just change the wording to say, to in line with the whatever. There's, better people to wordsmith it than me.
We'll make it as relative to the limitations contained in the charter section.
That sounds awesome.
All right, thank you. Councilor Menke.
Yeah, can we, they said we have to go to. Yes?
You broke up there.
I'm sorry. This would have to go to a public hearing?
Correct. Once we have the language and it's been reviewed by the town attorney, we would put it forward for the council to schedule a public hearing and possibly take action that same night.
Okay, so can you make the changes we talked about today and then send it to the town attorney and we can schedule the hearing then?
Yep, we could go about that as long as everything gets worked out this evening. We could submit it to him either tomorrow or Thursday. He would be able to get it back to us prior to our agenda setting for the 10th. At that meeting, we could effectively schedule it for your first meeting in September.
Okay,
And then we can
Thank you.
still make changes after the public hearing, right?
That is correct. You may get comments from the public
Thank
that
you.
they make suggestions for, and at that point, you could
Right.
make those changes as part of the meeting and adoption.
all set, Counselor Menke? I think Tim's frozen. We'll move on.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, Counselor Annis?
Thank you. Keith, what are you envisioning once this passes? Which projects would come under this new committee? Anything that has not gone to referendum or?
You know, you raise a good point. I think that would be a decision that the council would make. It's a policy decision whether you want to continue with the, for example, the Anna Reynolds Committee as it's currently configured and the Mill Pond Pool Committee. That I think that's more of a decision that the council would make. And then we would either enact the new committee to take over any of those projects or leave the current committees running those projects.
I mean, because Reynolds is full speed going ahead. They have the knowledge, they have the of what's been going on. And I would hate to see that be disbanded and have to get people back acclimated into going forward. You know, I can see Mill Pond because that has not gone to referendum, but you know, I think we should consider, you know, what's going to happen to those two existing building committees. I think that's something that we need to consider.
All right, thank you. Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to piggyback on Counselor Donahue's comments before on the high threshold. Keith, what are you envisioning for the floor threshold in terms of the involvement of this committee? What scope of project or size of project would this committee step in at?
Well, that's a good question, and we're faced with that right now in that we have projects on your agenda tonight that are exceeding, I believe, the threshold for a committee to be formed. The high school roof project, for an example. You know, I think that the level of the threshold and then the max, you know, the range should be raised significantly. You know, the low end, I mean, $1 million probably makes a lot more sense than what we currently have, $100,000. Whether that's a good minimum, it would be debatable depending on what you feel as counselors. But you know, and then if you look at the 975 issue, that is extremely low for today's financing, we'll say, and cost of doing business. So I think, you know, when you get in, if you do charter revision, I think that's the time that we would recommend some numbers to you. But right now, the numbers don't make a lot of sense, and it's creating all kinds of issues with purchasing services and supplies.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
I think James has something he wants to say.
Just
Go ahead, James.
Just a piece to add in. Part of the entire proposal really puts it in front of the council to really determine, do you consider this project's important enough as well to say we really need it as part of the building commission? And that's where the project building procedures here under A really come into play. So this is saying the proposing agency is going to bring forward this proposal. They're going to bring it to you as the council. Effectively, you are going to make a determination and say, okay, this is a project for $250,000. We're putting on an addition to a building. Okay, yes, this should go forward. We should make sure it's structurally sound, all of those pieces. You may find that something even smaller than that may be necessary, or you may look at that higher rate, but that's where this piece ties in for everybody. It's really coming to you guys making the determination as the legislative board of the town. Do you want to go forward with that project under the committee's auspice or leave it under the town staff?
Okay. All right, thank you. Counselor Minor, I think you're all set. You're back on mute, so I'm going to assume you're all set.
I'm all
Counselor
set, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Donahue?
Personally, I mean, I think that if a committee is already started, it should be grandfathered in to continue. And then anything new should follow this new procedure. I mean, also the new procedure would allow us to actually be have a building committee. I mean, speaking from the Mill Pond perspective, they said we formed a building committee and they came in, they said, here's the plan. Prove it. It's like, so we're not a building committee. We didn't really have any input into the building, except for the solar panels. I'm going to give Carol the credit for the solar panels. And I think the rainwater roof. But, they already had a plan and they came to us that this is what we want to do when they had all the data as to why they wanted to do it. And it was, didn't seem like there was a lot of movement to the plan. So I would hope that this permanent building committee would be a building committee, not a pre-approved plan committee.
All right, thank you.
That's part of the intent.
Okay, I don't see any other hands up. At this point, my suggestion would be that we take the language with the changes that were suggested this evening and have it forwarded over to the town attorney for his review. And then I'm guessing since we want to do the public hearing, we should go ahead and set it up. I'm looking to the counselors to either shake their heads or give me a thumbs up as to whether they're comfortable moving the public hearing to August 10th, or I'm just concerned if we cancel the last meeting in August, it's going to put it off even longer.
Yeah, let's move it to the 10th.
Move it to the 10th.
No, you won't be able to move to the 10th. Your 10th will be your introduction meeting and then your scheduling.
Okay, so
So
we
they-
have to, we would have to waive the rules tonight to do that. So we'll be adding it to the agenda for the 10th. to
No,
Schedule,
no, you wouldn't have to waive the rules either. We don't have official language for you yet,
gotcha.
or an introduction resolution or a scheduling resolution for that. So we have to go through the town attorney
Yeah.
process first.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to waive tonight. I was just saying, that in order to set it, it would be, it wouldn't make sense procedurally.
Correct.
So we'll go ahead and forward the language to the town attorney and we'll get his take on it back to us based on the changes that we recommended this evening. And then we will go ahead and add to the agenda on the 10th to, if we approve the language, to go ahead and schedule a public hearing for the following meeting.
Unless you're planning to cancel your 24th, then it will be the
Right.
first meeting. in
Whatever the
September.
following meeting is, correct?
Right. That would be the 14th of September if we looked at that way.
Okay. Or if we have a special meeting between now and then.
If we have enough time for advertising, we could do that.
Okay. Counselor Minor? Counselor Minor, are you there?
No, you answered it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All right, so I think we're all set on this one. We will move on. Next is discussion of the land acquisition fund. This should be a pretty quick discussion, hopefully. We've talked about this in the past. The current land acquisition fund language is a bit vague onto whether we must or shall or may put money in each year. And so I think the intent of this council, based on our discussion from last week, or last meeting rather, is to set a minimum threshold that we must meet each year in terms of an allocation during budget time into the land acquisition funds to make sure that we are keeping that fund moving forward and getting it a little healthier than it is currently, so that should a parcel become available, we would be in a better position for purchasing or moving forward with that. So that was the intent of the discussion. Should we decide to move forward with an amendment, we would have to introduce and schedule the public hearing, and we could do that for August 10th based on the memo we have in our packet. If we are simply making that one change. So I will open it up for discussion. Counselor Menke.
Yeah, I think we should make it I think this is one of those things that both parties, when they go through their budget book, it's something that's too easy to take out of the budget to try to save, a $250,000 someplace. I think we should make it a bare minimum. I would recommend $10,000 that we put in there every year, and we let it grow. And so, as time goes on, we have a bigger bankroll. Doesn't mean we couldn't put more in. We always would have the option to put more in, but I think at least the 10,000 shows we have a commitment to do something with land acquisition should the need arise. And it's what, by putting a minimum, we won't be able to then take it out for, to shave off something for, make the budget look better. So I would recommend minimum of $10,000.
Okay. I agree with you. I think that makes a lot of sense, Counselor Menke. Any other thoughts, discussion, or suggestions? Yes, Mr. Kropinski.
So as part of your discussion at the last meeting, I believe it was Counselor Minor who may have brought it up. The use of sale of land funds to be directly deposited, or it could have been Counselor Petracco, I'm not sure who did. We actually discussed that possibility with the finance director, and it wouldn't be something that we would suggest making directly go in. It should be an action of the council. And as I had outlined in the memo as well, if you have a large sale, do you really want all of that to go in when it can be applied to other projects for the town? So I just want to make sure that everybody was aware that was a discussion and we did review it, but it was a recommendation we would not suggest making at this time.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, similarly, this past year, when we sold a small parcel for, I think it was around 60,000, the council did take action to add that into the fund. And that, as you mentioned, would still be our prerogative moving forward. This would just really, the change that's proposed this evening would just set that minimum allocation amount, and we could always put more if we chose to.
Correct.
So we do have the land acquisition fund language. The recommendation of this council, it sounds like, would be to set that minimum threshold at 10,000. At this point, we would forward this, I believe, also to the town attorney for his review, but are we looking to schedule the public hearing tonight?
Nope.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm stuck here in, okay.
Yeah, these are all discussions at this point until we finalize the language. Then we'll put forward the introduction and resolution for public hearing scheduling. And effectively, we should be able to do all the scheduling on our August 10th meeting and have that taken care of.
Okay. Perfect. We're going to keep the town attorney busy.
We are.
All right. All right, folks. So this will move to the August 10th agenda for further consideration. All right, next on our agenda this evening is the possibility of canceling the August 24th regular meeting. I will say, based on our large agenda this evening and the things that we have on the docket, so to speak, we may want to consider tabling the consideration of canceling until the August 10th meeting to see where we stand in terms of agenda needs. So I'll throw that out for consideration.
I agree.
Counselor Menke?
I would move we table this until our next, we can still act on it at our next meeting because it's on the agenda, but I would move we table it to the 10th.
Second.
All right, so motion made by Counselor Menke, seconded by Counselor Camillo. Any other council discussion? All right, all those in favor, please unmute for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up this evening is the discussion of in-person meeting requirements. As you all know, we have been waiting for updates and for equipment to update our town hall meeting room so that we could adequately meet the needs of the audiovisual piece. And so I will turn it over. I believe that we have Paul Boutat and James here this evening to update us on this.
We do.
All right.
I'll turn it over to Paul first. He's been in contact with Vision Point already, and he has an idea of what their scheduling is at the moment, but we don't have a definitive date when they'll be in. I see, nope, there he is.
Hi, yes, I provided that to the town manager and to James as far as an update. We're still waiting on at least 3 pieces of equipment that the vendor is tracking right now to make the modifications inside the town council and also connectivity for audio and video feeds going over to NCTV. Those items are being tracked right now as far as August, I think is what we have. I believe, James, from, I don't have the email in front of me, regarding the timeline on the arrival. They have tried to find alternative pieces of equipment, and by the time they identified other items, those items had longer lead times than what they have already ordered. So once those items are in, then we'll be provided with a installation date.
Yeah, based upon your email you sent through, Paul, I'm showing the council chambers as an anticipated ship date of August 6th with a possibility of them being in their warehouse for August 11th and then scheduling. We have the conference room upstairs that's also a Zoom with a shipment date of 8/20. And then we also have a ship out date for a Parks and Recreation outdoor speaker for 7:30. So there are a couple of things that are still happening at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, James.
Counselor Annis, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Paul, are we going to be given priority to installation as soon as the parts come in? Or do we have to be put on their schedule?
They are aware that we the items installed, configured, and tested. So yes, they understand that we're a priority, and then I've been told that we are going to receive priority treatment once those items come in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Counselor Donahue? You're muted, John.
Well, you gotta hate it when that happens. I had to put on my NCTV hat for a moment. After the equipment gets delivered to, via Vision Point, there is still, items that we have to finish because we can't configure our systems until their systems are in. So even though we might be ready to go live for the August 10th meeting, we will still most likely have to pick off the Zoom feed and just send that out and, not continue our normal broadcast at NCTV. We can do it, we can make it happen, but just, to add on that we need time after the equipment gets there to get our vendor back in to, make the final connections. I'm not embarrassed to say I don't have a clue what they're doing in there, so. Just information.
Thank you. Any other council comment or question on this item? Okay. Thank you, Paul and James.
Pleasure.
All right, next item this evening, let's see, we're moving in now to new business. The first item is the air handler stabilizer installation. There is a waiver requested on this, I believe, because of timelines for the necessary work. But I will let you go ahead and give us the update, Mr. Chapman or James, whoever's going to speak on this one.
Actually, this one I believe will be Paul and Mr. Chapman as well.
Okay.
I believe Joe Harpy had requested to be on tonight too, but I don't see him.
Yeah, he actually ended up with a family event.
Okay.
Yeah, he called me earlier and he apologized profusely that he was not able to be on this evening, but said that if we did have any questions, he would certainly provide written responses after the fact if we needed that.
Well, Paul, being our facilities director until Thursday or Friday, is here to answer or basically update the council on the status of the vibration of the HVAC over the human services area and the corrective action has to be taken and the cost of that corrective action. So Paul, I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you, Town Manager. The building committee has referred this day 2 item, as they've identified, over to the town. So at this point, we received I say estimated or rough order of magnitude pricing from Downs Construction. So the short backstory on the 60-ton unit that we have on one section of the building is that during value engineering and construction engineering, isolators were removed for cost savings on several of the air conditioning units. And that's come back to where maybe on this particular unit that should not have been one of the options that we looked at as far as value engineering. But again, we're dealing with what the current issue is, which was vibration of the unit that is coming down into the building and causing noise in the work areas, as well as loud noises as far as vibration as well as noise. In order to remediate that issue, the designer QA&M, DTC, and Downs have all looked at the unit and come to the conclusion that the way to remediate that problem would be to go back, lift the unit up off the roof, which will require a crane. And prior to that, the actual unit itself has to be decommissioned, disconnected. Roof work has to be done in order to install curbing, which is what the unit actually sits on. They're large pieces that come out from the structure to the roof, and the unit sits on it. And then when those get replaced, the roof will have to be reseamed in that particular area. There'll be isolators, which are almost, think of them as shock absorbers, that the unit will be sitting on. And then the unit will be reinstalled, and there'll be some extensions on electrical that'll be needed in order to adjust for the height, as well as HVAC lines and other items that go with that in order to make the unit capable of running again, and then to be re-energized and brought back online. So right now we have work estimated based upon Downs's rough order of magnitude that they believe that the price to do this work would not exceed $150,000. My recommendation to the town manager was that we utilize the existing construction team that built the building and all their subcontractors in order to make this remediation, since they are familiar with the building, instead of having new people come inside here and try to identify electrical conduits and understand the system. So I think that's in our best interest.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Menke, you have a question?
Yeah, would the building have to be shut down, or that area of the building shut down while this work is done?
I think it will have to take a look at it as far as what's the temperature going to be and the maintenance window. So if we can identify a maintenance window, say within 2 days, and then we can possibly look at looking at if weekend time is available as far as off hours, and try to avoid impact to the use of that space. But anything being served by RTU1, which is rooftop 1, would be impacted by this as far as ventilation. So if we had hot days, we'd have no air conditioning, no airflow, and no way to actually control CO levels, because we would not be able to get that air movement. So we'd either have to put temporary units within the building. But again, it all depends on what the time frame is going to be. I've heard estimates of 2 days. If we can do it within that time frame, I think we try to pick the best 2 days that would work for us.
And how soon could this work start?
Right now, Downs is still lining up finalized pricing from the electrical contractor, as well as scheduling. So I do not have an answer on that as of today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Paul, based on the fact that they're still lining up, what's the rationale for the need for the waiver if they're not ready to start yet?
I think the bid amount of over $30,000 will require waivers. So even if we went out to put this work out to bid, we could get a bunch of different contractors. So I think the bid waiver is to piggyback, say, the construction contract that we had in place with these, with Downs being the construction manager. However, if we were to put this out to bid, we would not necessarily get the same contractors and subcontractors.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's a bid waiver versus an action waiver, or is this
looking for a bid waiver, not an action waiver?
Looking for both.
Both, right? Because we're looking to take action this evening on a new business item.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, I was just going to call on Counselor Minor, but it looks like he just disappeared.
He just dropped off.
Okay,
If he comes back in, I will let you know.
thank you. All right, so we do have to, before we can do anything with this, we need to waive the rules to be able to take action this evening. And so that's the first resolution in the packet. Counselor Menke, would you go ahead and read that in for me, please?
Certainly. Resolved, the Newington Town Council, in accordance with Section 11 of the Town Council Rules of Procedure adopted February 11th, 2020, hereby moves to allow action on agenda item, let's see, 7A, to authorize the installation of spring isolator curbing and necessary repairs to HVC unit RTU-1.
Second.
And Counselor Minor is back
Counselor
on.
Camillo. Oh, thank you. All right, seconded by Counselor Camillo. I'm going to go ahead and do the vote on the motion to waive the rules. And then I know Counselor Minor had his hand up before he dropped off. We'll go ahead and address that in a moment. So we're looking just right now, the motion on the table is to waive the rules so that we are able to take action this evening. All those in favor, if you would unmute. Favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. And now we are going to go back into discussion, but we are going to read the resolution on the actual action that we're looking to take. If someone could read that in for me.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Counselor Menke.
Whereas the town of Newington has been informed that the Human Service Department has experiencing excessive noise from rooftop HVAC unit. And whereas it has been determined that when the original HVAC unit was installed, the spring isolator curbing was removed from the original project scope. And whereas the town desires to install the necessary spring isolation curbing to improve the working environment within the offices below the unit. And whereas the town has received a rough order of magnitude, ROM, from Downs Construction, estimated cost of $134,000 to complete the repair. And whereas the rough order magnitude ROM is only an estimate, the town staff has recommended that the town council allow an expenditure of up to $150,000 from the COVID grant received under the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA. And whereas the town council under the Newington Town Charter, section C814, hereby determines that it is not in the best interest of the town to require sealed bids due to the health and well-being of the affected employees. And now therefore be it resolved, the Newington Town Council hereby authorizes the town manager to execute any and all necessary document in order to complete the installation of spring isolator curbing and any necessary repairs to HVAC unit RTU-1.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Annis. Thank you. All right, now, because we are waiving the rules this evening, we are going to open it up to public participation, and then we will conclude our council discussion after we hear from the public, if there is anyone that would like to weigh in. So I'm going to go ahead and flip over to that window. Give me one. All right, so at this point, because we are waiving the rules, we would like to give the public an opportunity to weigh in. If you would like to raise your hand, you can do so in the participants window in the Zoom application, or if you're on your phone, *9 would allow you to raise your hand so we know that you would like to be recognized in the meeting. We'll just give it a quick second, see if anyone would like to speak. Okay, I don't see any members of the public raising their hands at this point, so we will continue with any further council discussion or question. I know Counselor Minor, you had gotten bumped off earlier. If you do have that question still that you'd like to ask, you certainly can do so now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just a comment more so than a question, and it was the change in the request for this work as it was initially in the first round, put the elimination of this as an option at the level of the facilities director, who was a licensed engineer with HVAC. The committee did not have a decision on this as it was initially presented, and I just wanted to clarify that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I did speak with, as I mentioned, Mr. Harpy, who was the chair of the committee, had called me earlier today, and he had shared a similar concern. He said that he wanted me to know the facilities director, former facilities director, had recommended or said that the external stabilizers were not needed, that just the internal piece was enough. And that initially the committee was told that they would not be installed over an occupied portion of the building, and that he believed that that had changed as well. So that may be why some of these things had occurred. There were some changes made that the committee was not made aware of, according to Mr. Hartley. And he's willing to answer questions if we have them, if we forward them to him. But if we want to take action tonight, then we need to go ahead and consider that. And as mentioned in the memo, this is a concern for the employees that are currently in this area of the building. So I would like to move forward with this evening and go ahead with this. Any other council comment or question before we go ahead with a roll call vote? Or do we need a roll call vote, guys? Are we good with this? If you shake your heads, I'll know. Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on. The next item this evening is the Newington High School roof repairs. Mr. Chapman.
Yes, as pointed out in the memo that was sent to you, the superintendent had contacted me concerning a cost estimate that she had received for the first leg of replacing sections of the high school roof. It was brought in just under $500,000, for which she did not have the funding to pay for, so she was seeking our assistance, and I indicated that I would take a look at the situation, and we ended up calling in Silktown Roofing, another roofing company that looked at the section of the roof that was in question, and came in with a cost of, I think it was just under $200,000. And I had the building official look at the proposal, and I concluded that we could save about $300,000 by going with Silktown Roof. We'd have a 30-year warranty, the same as what was being offered by the other company. And so I went back to the superintendent, and she had the chairperson of the Board of Education solicit their members to see if they would support going with Silktown for the $200,000, and they did have a consensus to move forward. And so I think everybody's on board. Now, the difference between the $500,000 roof and the $200,000 roof is primarily that $500,000 roof goes through the process of the state requirements for the state to get provide reimbursement back to the town. And even with the reimbursement, we still would be saving money by going with the Silktown Roof proposal. So it's my recommendation that the council take an action at their next convenient timeframe to endorse and support and approve the Silktown proposal. We do have a window of opportunity that they provided to us that they could do this roof, this section of the roof, in the middle of August. They have the material, and let me just say the materials are very difficult to obtain. As my memo points out, they also were asked to give the cost of another section of roof adjacent to the roof that we're proposing. They do not have the materials in place at this point to do a 30-year roof in that section. However, they are looking for, and I suggest that they consider approving them moving forward, provided they do get the materials, because the cost probably will be equal to or more than the $500,000 if you go with the original school proposal roof contractor. So both roofs will probably be in the neighborhood of, we'll say $400,000 if we do it under the Silktown Roofing versus probably $1 million or more if you do it through the proposal that was given to the superintendent.
Okay,
That's essentially it.
all right, I see a couple of hands up. Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Were the prices that were generated here, the costs associated, Keith, were they as a result of an RFP, or how did this come around?
No. Well, the first one, I don't know how they secured the first proposal. I don't have that information but apparently they received one proposal back in June, late June, for the roof to be done by the company they were working with. And maybe he's been doing other roofs for the school department as well. But the proposal that I obtained is not through an RFP, was strictly taking the specs that the original contractor provided and sharing them with Silktown Roofing. They inspected the roof and they just developed their proposal. They did not know what the first contractor was proposing at $500,000 or $499,000. So they created their cost independent of any other proposals. And I did not pursue any additional ones based upon the need to get the roof done and the fact that the material that needs to be used is very scarce. And if we don't get it done now, the roof has had history of leaking and it's only going to get worse. So we're looking to get this done as quickly as possible.
Okay, I'm just curious how the project in this scope didn't go out for an RFP. I thought the rule of thumb was 35,000 or above required to go out.
Yeah, I believe that the request that the Board of Education or the superintendent originally made was due to the roof's condition and the fact that it had been leaking off and on, that I think they were going to probably be proposing their proposal as an emergency purchase and would ask for the waiver of the 3 quotes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, I know building materials are scarce. And they have the building materials on site to do this work right now. Is that correct?
Yes, they've secured enough material, a 30-year warranty material roof to do the first section. They are seeking to find the material to do the second section. However, they do not have that second section in place at this time. So we may not be able to get that second section done this year.
Do we need to act on this? I mean, if they're going to start in mid-August, that's only, unfortunately, just right around the corner.
Yep.
Do we need to act on this before our August 10th meeting?
I think that you need to probably have a special meeting just to approve this. Yes. Otherwise, we don't want to lose this opportunity. And if I can't guarantee that the town wants to go forward, then he may move to another site and use that material.
Right.
So I would suggest that, we'll say by the early part of August, you need to take an action on this at a special meeting.
So then you propose we call a special meeting for next week?
I would, depending on your availability, I would say the sooner the better, yes.
Typically we would do it on the Tuesday, but I know Tuesday's National Night Out for the police department at Town Hall. So Tuesday of next week may not be the best. So we may have to look at either Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Just a suggestion.
Either one, I think it's important to get it. I mean, if they have the materials, I think we should move ahead with it, because otherwise those materials will go someplace else. We could be waiting another, like Tommy said, another year to get this fixed.
So Keith, would we have to do a waiver on this in terms of the cost of this and not going out for the RFP, or how does that work?
You would be waiving James, back me up here, you'd be waiving the bid process.
Yep. Okay.
To secure this purchase under an emergency situation, because the roof is leaking, and it's only going to cause more damage if it continues to leak.
That's correct. Just like we just did with our previous motion, we'll put in the bid waiver requirement as part of that for the RFP process.
So what I would ask you as just a consensus tonight, is there any possibility that you will not support this? I need to let the contractor know as quickly as possible whether you're looking like you're going to support it or not, so he knows what he's to do.
I'm looking for shakes of the head, but Counselor Minor, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding correctly, this will not meet the State Department of Education's reimbursement requirements. What is the difference between the two on why this is ineligible?
Well, it's ineligible because the requirements that are outlined in the specifications that were drawn up by apparently the architect that the school board had developed or hired have a lot of requirements that the school for reimbursement that would have to be conducted. And the roofing company Silktown looked at the roof, inspected the roof, and believes that if you want a 30-year roof, they can provide it, 30-year warranty roof, which is what we should be worried about. The state, I don't know. I don't know what would be driving this to $500,000 for a roof of this size, but whatever the state specs call for, that's apparently what was bid on for the $499,000.
Do you happen to have a copy of that bid, or can you get access and forward that to us? I'm just curious to what the difference is between the specs.
Yeah, I have their proposal, both proposals, Silktown's and the other company is called Matron out of Baltic, Connecticut. I have
You have that as part of your packet.
Yeah, that's it. I was just gonna say that they're in our packet, Chris.
I don't remember seeing that page. That's why I'm asking. And
Yeah,
that's
the
the government.
Matern, which was the more expensive one, was first right after the memo. And it has the specs and the cost and the scope of work. And then the Silktown roofing is second after that.
all right.
I will say that
We can certainly forward it back out again.
there's at least a 3/4 inch packet of information that was provided from upstairs to me. I assume that's what the architect developed for specifications. What it's contained within that, I did not get into. I'm not a roofing guy. I wouldn't know what I was reading.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Camillo.
So basically, Keith, you're saying if we went with the first bid and you got the reimbursement from the state, we'd be paying about $300,000 out of pocket, but going this way without going through the state, we're going to save $100,000.
I would say that's in the ballpark. That sounds reasonable. And if you do 2 roofs, then you add that much more of savings.
Right. So you still save $100,000.
I think this is what this is showing is that when you're seeking school reimbursement, it comes at a cost. And I'm not sure that an existing roof on a building, a roof is a roof. And I don't know, I get puzzled as to why the costs go up so high compared to not seeking reimbursement, but that's the functions of the way
their idea.
the state operates.
They're spreading the wealth on the backs of all the citizens of the state.
And this was, again, this is supported by the Board of Education. They haven't voted on it. They will vote on it when they come together again at their next meeting. But they have submitted a consensus that they want to go forward with this. The superintendent supports it as well. And I think timing is of essence at this point.
Thanks, Keith.
Counselor Donahue?
I'm looking through the paperwork again, and Mayturn would do one section of the roof for 500,000 and Silktown would do two sections of the roof for 500,000?
Well, actually, Silktown will do two sections of the roof for 400,000. We're assuming that because the sections of roof are somewhat similar in size, we're making an assumption that if the other contractor were asked to price out the second portion of the roof, that his proposal would be close to the 499,000 proposal from the first roof.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry, my math was off. All right, no, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Nagel.
My understanding, just to make it clear, is that tonight we are just deciding through consensus as to whether we approve of the $200,000 amount that has come in as opposed to 500 by the original company, and that other amount will be dealt with at another time. Am I correct?
Well, what I would suggest you do, because if Silktown were able to get the other roof material, the 30-year warranty material, over the next several weeks or a month or whatever, I would suggest that you will say approve both sections of roofs with the understanding that only the first section may get done if the materials for the second section are not available.
So in other words, Mr. Chapman, you're recommending that we take a consensus that we would approve both, and that at a later time, depending upon when the monies are available, and if the Board of Ed, who supposedly is going to approve this, we will vote on it.
Well, that would be done through at your special meeting coming up.
Right.
Schedule. Yes.
Right. So indeed, the Board of Ed, just to be clear, also will look at that second part of the roof and supposedly will approve of that going forward before we have the next council meeting. Is that right?
That's the goal. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make certain we were all clear about what we're about. Thanks.
But just another point of clarification, the Board of Ed's not meeting before that, correct? This is just a simple consensus.
I don't know what the Board of Education schedule is at this point. They may have to have a special meeting as well.
Okay. Counselor Mankey?
I believe there's a consensus here to move forward, and I would just say we schedule a special meeting for sometime next week, either Wednesday or Thursday, I believe would probably be okay, and then move forward with that at that time.
That would be good. And I will let the superintendent know that's your schedule, and hopefully she can have a special meeting by the board prior to your meeting where they approve going forward as well.
Okay. Counselors, if you have any constraints scheduling wise on Wednesday or Thursday of next week, please text me and let me know. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and schedule it and send it out to y'all, okay?
I will say that we do have one for my side of it. We actually have 3 meetings going on Thursday, so Wednesday would be much appreciated.
So we're aiming for Wednesday. All right, guys. So let me know if there's any times that work better than others in terms of the evening hours. And we'll try to get that scheduled.
If we can have it earlier, before 7, it would be appreciated. I have a meeting at 7. Can it be at 6, 5?
At 6. So
I
here's
agree.
6.
I agree.
All right, so we'll aim for 6 on Wednesday.
6 on Wednesday.
Okay.
8-4.
All right. Next item this evening is the amendment to the simple recycling agreement. You'll remember back several years ago now, actually. I think it was back in 2018. We had a company come in, and you might remember the pink bags that people were putting out for textile materials. And so it looks like they've come back now. They had been taking a break, I believe, during COVID. And now they've come back for some amendments to the contract language. It looks like a 3-year extension, as well as some other changes. According to our memo, Attorney Ancona has had the opportunity to review the draft amendment and didn't see any issues, but it's up to us now to look at the content and consider that. James, did you want to update us on this, or is this Keith?
Okay. What's happened is the vendor is proposing to change a few things. One would be that currently the way it works is the pink bags are put out the same day as the recycling and trash are put out, depending on where you live in town. Well, what they've discovered is that because they're put out at the same time, it's become apparent to, I guess, people that scout the area out that they go through the pink bags and then they leave whatever they don't want behind, and whatever is taken never gets to be recycled the way it was intended. It's taken to be used for other uses for whatever reason. So what they're proposing is that they not follow the schedule of trash and recycling on a regular weekly basis, where they would prefer that if somebody has a pink bag ready to go to the recycling, textile recycling, that they will call and they will come and pick it up. That way it's not getting stolen off the curb. Because they had been traditionally picking up about 500 pounds a week. However, in the last 6 or 8 months, it's dropped about 300 pounds a week. So it's not doing a good service to the residents or to the vendor that is handling this material. So they would like to be able to change their pickup time to an appointment date where residents will just call, say, okay, I'm at such and such an address, I have a pink bag. They will tell them what day to put it out, or they'll, so that way it doesn't get left out there with the regular trash and then have it gone through, and then what's left is really of no value to anyone. The other issue is they'd like to extend the contract. Have that, let's see. Yeah, they want to extension to 2024. And from what I understand in talking with Rob Hillman, this program's worked pretty well over the years. It's not been a problem for the town whatsoever. And it is a way in which we reduce the weight going into the regular trash receptacles, and actually is a product that gets reused in a better way rather than burning it up down at the burn plant. So those are the two major changes that they would like to see. Their tonnage is down for the year last year, and they'd like to see us be able to extend the contract to 2024.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Minor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification, Keith. Did they say that their tonnage was down over the last fiscal year and this year?
Yes, yeah, I guess they had been picking up about 500 pounds per week in Newington. However, that's now dropped to about 300 pounds per week. And what they're finding is a lot of the pink bags are opened up and the material is strewn on the lawn. And so they're down to about 300 pounds a week now.
Okay, because I know that just in social media recently over the last few weeks, there was some discussion over it. And I was under the understanding that they had actually suspended operations and were not picking up.
Yeah.
And you could maybe verify this with Ms. Foley. She was, I believe, in contact with them that they had suspended operations and were not picking up at all. So I'm just a little confused as to which is which.
I was not told that by Mr. Hillman, but I will check on that and let you know. I'll send you an email on that.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
I had heard the same, Chris. Yep.
And I know that in our neighborhood, there were several occasions where they have been out more than a week. So I'm questioning whether that they've been picking up at all.
Yep.
Let me find out.
Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yeah, if they are still in business and going to be collecting, I think there's more changes that residents are going to have to be made aware of. Because, for example, it says that the containers have to be placed. First of all, it doesn't look like there's going to be the little pink bags anymore, because it says containers will be provided by the resident. acceptable containers include plastic, paper bags, or boxes. So it looks like the pink bags, which is what kind of identify the program, is no longer a component of this, number one. Number two, it says containers will be placed outside the front door for collection. So it's not like on the curb as it used to be. So these are really pretty significant changes in terms of how the program operated. So I do see that on item 10, public information and education program, just someone will have to take charge of that and re-educate the residents on these major changes.
I think, Gail, that the pink bags were the identification that was put at the curb, so it was recognized that those are the textile recyclables. However, like everything else in the world, people are doing things that they weren't doing before illegally. And I think that this company has concluded that the pink bags are a signal that there's maybe good stuff in there. And putting it at the curb in pink didn't work. Putting it out there in a non-pink container would be really confusing. So I think what they're saying is call us, we will come to your house, we'll pick it up at the door. It doesn't have to be in a pink container. You can put it in whatever container you want to put it in. And they just want to get away from that whole idea of putting it out at the curb.
No, I agree. And I think the changes are good, but it is a substantial difference in the program.
Yeah.
So it's just that
So
the
it'll
residents
have to be,
re-educated.
it'll have to be an education. That's correct.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Counselor Braverman.
So what about condos, Keith?
What about what?
Hello?
I didn't
She said,
hear.
what about
Condominiums. Are we
condominiums?
changed from what we currently do?
Uh,
Condominiums.
A good question. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't have an answer for you on the condos. Good question. I'll let you know.
Or apartments or anything.
I will send out an email to you.
Okay.
I would say they're probably going
Thank
to,
you.
yeah, they're going to probably suggest that the package or the container be put outside your condo door and they'll pick it up at there, but we'll find out. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so this will be on our agenda for our next meeting for approval. We'll
Okay.
move this on. All right. Thank you. Next up is resignations and appointments. We have before us a resignation of Mary B. Udis from the Commission on Aging and Disabled and the BALF Commission. It appears she's moved out of town or is moving out of town, and that's the reason for it. Counselor Annis, do you want to go ahead with that?
Thank you. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby accepts the resignation of Mary B. Udice from the Commission on Aged and Disabled in accordance with the communication received July 21st, 2021 and effective July 23rd, 2021.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Second by Counselor Mankey. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Want to continue on, Counselor Annis?
Sure. Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby accepts the resignation of Mary B. Udice from the BALF Commission in accordance with the communication received July 21st, 2021 and effective July 23rd, 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Mankey. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next up on our agenda this evening is our tax refunds. Deputy Mayor Berdrake, would you like to do this one?
Resolved that property tax refunds in the amount of $512.42 are hereby approved in the individual amounts and for those named on the request for refund of an overpayment of taxes certified by the revenue collector, a list of which is attached to this resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Braverman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion
Aye.
passes. Thank you. Motion passes. All right, next item is approval of previous meeting minutes. We have before us this evening, the July 7th, 2021 special meeting minutes July 13th, 2021 regular meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to accept those as written.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Manky, seconded by Counselor Annis. Any discussion on those? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Moving right along, next is written and oral communications from the town manager.
Just a few things. Just wanted to update you on the solar effort. We had the solar people out today looking at the town hall roof. That's going to be hopefully scheduled in the next couple of months for installation. They also have looked at the Patterson roof. There's some electrical work that will have to be done down at that building. We also got approval for the Z-Rex for the high school and two, I believe it's E Green and yeah, can't remember the other one, schools. So that's going to go to the Board of Education for their consideration. They are looking at those roofs tomorrow to make sure that they're in a condition that we could install 20-year solar panels on. So that's moving along. That's going to be a savings of money for the town overall. In the long run, there's no cost to us for having that solar work done or any electrical work or anything else. It's all at no cost. The only other thing I have is that, let me just see here. Yeah, we do have as I mentioned earlier, the facilities manager will be starting on Friday. And we'll introduce him and our new fire marshal, hopefully within the next month or so. Either we were hoping to have it live, but if not, we'll do a Zoom for them, depending on what happens with COVID. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the town manager? Counselor Nagel.
Yes, a minor one, but it might be important to some residents that live on Willard Avenue near my house. There has been a minor leak of water on Willard Avenue on the sidewalk, and it's been consistent for about a week and a half. It's not major. Who do we contact? Do we go straight to MDC, or do we contact you or someone from the town to come out and look at it? It isn't major, but it's enough that it continues every day for at least the past week, if not more.
It's near your house, David?
Yeah, it's south of it.
We'll take a look at it. You've reported it. We'll take it from here.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I don't see any other hands. So we will move on. Next is council liaison and committee reports. Counselor Nagel.
Yes, the town manager evaluation committee met and in executive session looked over materials that we've received from town council members and organized it. And we've agreed to move it on for an executive session to be determined about the council because of the confidentiality of the materials. It's to be determined by the council, however, how is that to be handled at a time in the future. Thank you.
Counselor Nagel, I believe, did the committee agree that it should go on the next agenda as an executive session?
Correct me if I'm wrong, other members, but I think we wanted to put it forth to you because we didn't know if we were going in-house or not.
Oh,
and
right.
there are confidential materials that need to be shared with members of the council.
Okay. Yeah, if it can be in person, that's great. If not, certainly the confidential materials could be handled. We'd have to figure out how to get them to folks, either myself or you or whoever would like to volunteer. We could certainly, if you wanted to create packets, I would be willing to deliver if they're sealed packets or however you wanted to do it. If we need to do it on a Zoom, we can make that work.
Okay, we just did not know, and of course, talking about COVID earlier, we didn't know how to proceed or when we're going to do it, what was the best way to move forward and still respect everyone in terms of the confidentiality of materials, both the council and the town manager.
Okay. So we'll just, I'm sure, James, you already have it on your list because I know I had mentioned it to you after the meeting, but we'll go ahead and we'll communicate with Mr. Nagel as the chair of the committee and try and figure out the logistics of that moving forward.
I believe actually we had notated that one being as an August 10th, but we also have it as an estimated item as new business. So we can have it either way right now.
Okay.
Yep.
So Carol and Tim will talk about it at agenda setting. We'll figure it out.
Correct. Which is only
Okay.
Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday.
So the only question is how to get the materials to people depending upon how the meeting's going to be held.
Okay, we'll be in touch about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item is public participation. I'm going to just click on over to that window and see any member of the public can raise their hand by doing so in the participants window in the app or *9 if you're on your phone. I see we have Miss Lyons with her hand up, so I will go ahead and do that.
Hi, it's Rose Lyons, hopefully with my last diatribe about the CIP committee. My address is 46 Elton Drive. I've probably been the biggest advocate for change in the CIP committee. I've been watching it over the last 10 years, and I've seen it go from the department heads presenting their recommendations to the town manager reviewing it, and then giving his recommendations or her recommendations to the CIP committee, the department heads coming before the CIP committee and discussing the various projects, and they were able to ask questions, and then they would prioritize what they thought should be in the CIP budget. Then the town manager would bring it on to the town council, and the town council would then again review it and make any changes that were necessary. Over the years I've been watching, I've seen various scenarios where the budget that went to the town council unexpectedly got changed in between the town council and the CIP committee, unbeknownst to some other members, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes actions going on from what I could tell. It deteriorated to the point where the town manager would present a budget to the CIP committee. I saw very little, if any, discussion about the projects, and it was just basically rubber stamped. And the last CIP committee, unfortunately, the town manager was new. I'm sorry?
I believe Ms. Braverman has her microphone on. I'll mute her. Go ahead.
Okay. Unfortunately, the last CIP committee, the town manager was new and the people on the committee were new. There was no direction as to how the CIP was supposed to work. I asked that Tom Bowen come and explain to them what had to be done or what the original intent was for CIP. But you've gone this route now where you're going to disband it. Instead of fixing it, you're once again just putting it back in the hands of the town manager. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, not anything against Mr. Chapman, because I've seen Mr. Solomon, I've seen Mrs. Lane, I've seen firsthand what goes on at these meetings and what goes on behind the scenes. I hope that when the budget comes to you, that you take the time to go over it and just not rubber stamp what is handed to you. Ask questions, discuss it, and ask for line items like Councilor Minor has suggested, not just generalizations, repairs to this or repairs to that. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay well, and hoping to get back in person, but the numbers aren't looking good. Take care. Good night.
Good night. All right, I don't see any other hands up, so we will continue on to remarks by counselors. All right, seeing none, we will move to adjournment. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Mankey, seconded by Counselor Donahue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned at 9:59. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.